In this video, I look at how the Rockets did against the zone defense of the Orlando Magic. I talk about big picture view of the rebuild, and I also look at the rumors that James Harden may be interested in becoming a Houston Rocket again. Is that a good idea? Y'all find out with me and tap in. If you want to support the Chop Shop, make sure you stop by our merch store. We got great sales right now going on for Christmas. We dropped the price on a lot of items in there, pretty much dirt cheap. So stop by the merch store, pick you up a shirt, pick up a sweater, pick up a hoodie, pick up a mug. Just show support to the channel as we keep rocking with y'all and providing you this heat. Keep rocking with us and support our channel through buying merch at the merch store. So hit the Chop Shop merch store. The link to the store is going to be at the bottom of this video in the description. So check it out today. Show love to the channel, pick you up some great merch, quality content, quality basketball, quality merch. The Houston Rockets lost to the Orlando Magic 116-110 in a game that was really a tale of two halves. In the first half, the Rockets were able to play against a traditional defense while the Magic ran drop coverage and, typical schemes to guard our pick and roll and screening actions. And our guards were able to feast on that. In the first half of the game, the Rockets shot 52% from the field, 39% from three with only 5 turnovers. Getting to see a traditional defense kind of made them feel comfortable. Guys were hitting their shots. The team was playing pretty well, scoring 64 points in that half. And then when it went to halftime, the Magic were able to make adjustments that the Rockets just could not counter. And this is becoming a theme that I'm noticing with the team, in that a lot of teams are starting to play the zone against us. And this is basically a way to challenge our decision making in the backcourt, and it's working. I mean, the last 4 games we've seen a high amount of zones. I don't know if I've seen this amount played against pretty much any team in consecutive games. Usually you'll see zones in stretches where a team might do it for a couple quarters or a quarter here or there just to kind of get you out of your rhythm. But it seems now the NBA is on notice that the Rockets cannot beat the zone, and to me this is it's a problem for 2 parts of the team. It's a problem for obviously the team, showing the team IQ collectively, and obviously the offensive system. This is one of the issues that I have with our offensive system, and the fact that it's so dependent on the play of our backcourt. And when you have to be forced to play a more team concept type of offense, which is required to beat a zone, you get to see the limitations of that. Now, watching the game film from this game, it wasn't all terrible. The guys, they were generating decent shots. It really came down to the fourth quarter. Obviously they blew the lead in the third. They had, as high as 12, 14 point lead, and they blew that in the third. But when it went on to the fourth quarter, that's really where the game became out of hand for our guys, because the defense for the Magic turned up. They started hitting their shots, and they were basically daring us to beat their zone, and we just couldn't process it fast enough. So in that fourth quarter, we shot 40% from the field, 36% from three, which is not terrible. They were generating good shots, but we stopped getting to the free throw line because we weren't attacking as much, and the Magic were doing a good job of shielding off the basket. And also, the real backbreaker in all of this is the 8 turnovers that we had. We had 8 turnovers. 1 from Jabari, 1 from Sengun, and 3 from Kevin Porter Jr. And this is a thing for him. He always struggles against the zone because it doesn't play to his strengths as a player. You can't run pick and rolls against the zone. It's really kind of a bad idea to isolate against the zone. The best way to beat the zone is to get to the middle of that zone and then be able to move off of that. If you get to the middle, then it has to force the defense to kind of converge on that player. And there were a lot of times between Sengun and KJ Martin that they were the ones that were keeping us in the game. By Sengun, obviously they were playing through him in stretches of the game where they would pass him the ball and then allow him to pass out of there because he's a gifted passer. And honestly, they should just spam that. And when it wasn't Sengun, it was KJ Martin cutting and getting 2 feet in the paint and kicking out. I mean, you have to be disciplined enough to be able to play that offensive style against the zone, because it doesn't cater to you. And I think that's what it comes down to, that I'm seeing from both Jalen and Kevin Porter and a lot of the guys on the team, is that they're not looking at it from a team concept. The game for them is more individual based. There are a lot of times where obviously all season we've seen our shooters be open, and our guards will elect to want to take an isolation on a hard, on a better defensive player. There are times where they would get a switch from a weaker defender to a stronger defender, and they want to attack them in isolation. There are times where they run sets that are supposed to generate shots for their teammates, and they elect to, just drive to the basket. So the collective IQ in the backcourt is not great, and a lot of the lack of playmaking or lack of decision making down the stretch came down to the backcourt not really being able to read and process the defense in real time. I mean, in that fourth quarter, also we saw that Jalen only had one shot, and people want to blame the coach for that. I'm not going to blame all of that on Stephen Silas. In a big picture view, you can blame Stephen Silas for the one shot in the sense that his offensive system is so ISO and pick and roll and kind of me dominated that in the natural flow of things, he couldn't have gotten better looks. But also his fault in that he had his opportunities to be able to cut. He had opportunities to be able to attack the defense like KJ was doing. But when he saw those two bodies, because the Magic were playing the 3-2 zone, and when he had the ball at the top of the key, he saw those two long defenders there. He became less assertive and was willing to pass it out. And so, that's on him. That's on him. If you're going to be the guy, you got to take it. You got to grab the Bulls by the horn. And he's at some point in the games, he doesn't do that. And that's on him. That's a limitation of his game that he needs to work on. And the ability to have a tight enough handle and have the strength to be able to get feet in the paint and kick out to other guys. And for Kevin Porter, he did his thing. He had a good all-around game. The decision-making wasn't, great down the stretch, but I think this is one of his better offensive games due to the shots that he was getting. He was attacking in transition. He was able to pull up and hit some catch and shoot threes that were generated for him by his teammates. And, he was on par to having a good game until the zone came. And that was really what kind of threw him off towards the end with some of those turnovers, because you have to be able to process it. And this speaks to kind of let's step back and look at a bigger picture of the Rockets. Currently right now, the way the roster is constructed, we don't have a floor general that's able to get those guys into those sets, that's able to pace the team, that's able to kind of dictate the offensive action, like ensuring that the ball gets into the post, ensuring that they cut, and some people will say Ty, but even though he should have played yesterday, I just don't think Ty is ready to be our floor general. I mean, he could probably give us good minutes, but I don't think he's ready for that level of competition right now. And, with the way the roster is constructed, it's not conducive to developing some of our players. Like I said, I've always said Jabari is a player that's always going to be dependent on his guards. And you shouldn't be able to run a zone against Jabari Smith Jr. I'm sorry, you shouldn't. In the NBA, there should be no world where a team can run a zone with Jabari Smith Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. on the court at the same time. There should be no world where that happens. And even to compound on that, there should be no world where you can run a zone with Kevin Porter Jr., Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun, one of the most dominant post players in the NBA and a gifted passer. There should be no world where you should be able to do that. Then I'm going to compound on that. There should be no world where you can run a zone with Jabari, KPJ, Sengun, and KJ Martin, a high flyer and one of the best cutters on the team. And even to the extent with Jalen, like I said, it's his fault, but he also should be a weapon in cutting and using his athleticism to get behind that zone, behind that three man on the three side of the zone in the defense. But the way our offense is built, the way the roster is built, the way they're utilizing these players, a lot of their strengths aren't being just maximized. We tend to play to our players' weaknesses and try to force the players to fit the offensive system rather than the system to fit what the talent of the players that you have. And this has been an ongoing thing. You guys have heard me say this ad nauseum. At this point, it's really not anything that we can do anything about, but it comes down to like two routes. And the way I'm looking at our rebuild right now, the Rockets have two options, right? So if they're not going to change the system, then they have to get better players to come in and play. Simply put, if they're not going to change the system, they have to get better players to come in, and play in this system, they have to get a better floor general, they have to get better, smarter players, or they have to throw away the system and get a new system. Those are the only two options right now. Those are the only two options, and one of them involves removing the coaching staff, and another one involves possibly moving some of our players and bringing in veterans and things like that. And honestly, if you guys want to know my honest take on this, I think that the Rockets are going to elect to go the route of adding players that can run the system, because to me that's the only thing that makes sense. There's no way in my mind that I can see that the front office and the coaches are looking at our team and are saying that, wow, this team can't beat a zone, but we can compete as a play-in team next year or a playoff team next year. You don't make those jumps like that. Those aren't the jumps that you see. The jumps you see are a competitive team that has some consistency, but losing games due to whatever, and it could be just like we're doing, shots not falling. But the reason that we're losing game is not because of talent or level of talent, or we're not up to the competition. A lot of it is just schematic issues and things like that. And a lot of it deals with collective IQ. And obviously, a lot of it deals with the system that they're playing in. But that IQ part, to me, is the biggest determinant of being able to play in settings like the playoffs or the play-in, because that means that you're going to have to make decisions in high leverage moments. And we just don't have the guys yet for that. Now, there's good news to both routes that I just discussed. You can bring in guys, like I said, or you can change the system and just make it simpler. Now, is there a happy medium? Yes, but the happy medium approach, in my opinion, doesn't really move the needle as far as the competitive level of the team, because the overhaul that would be needed to be made for us to become a competitive team involves literally bringing in like half the roster would have to be new players. And at the end of the day, this is a symptom of a bigger issue that I've been kind of just thinking over about our rebuild, is the fact that it seems as though that people are generalizing all the things that fall under a rebuild and the check marks and the objectives that you have to meet within your rebuild. People are placing that we are tanking as the end all be all for that. And in my opinion, the we are tanking explains the outcome of wins and losses. And for me, that was never the gauge of a good rebuild, whether you win or loss. Obviously, if you're trying to tank, you're going to lose games. That's acceptable. What you do want to see is the quality of the basketball and the collective growth and IQ of your team develop. Now, the Rockets have grown, immensely. Where they're failing right now is in the structure of their team, both from the coaching aspect and from the roster building aspect. Like, they don't have a well-functioning roster with the requisite pieces you need to be able to field a competitive team that's going to be consistent from night to night. And that's on the front office. I think it's time that we need to start looking at the front office and some of the things and decisions that they've made. Having 7 first-round picks on the roster and having to the point where some of these guys are being rotated in the G League because we don't have enough time or enough minutes to play them, because we have a 34-year-old guard that's getting 30 minutes a night that's in a spot where he might or might not even be traded. You would hope he gets traded, you would, at a minimum. But why, having that kind of the roadblock in the starting five kind of messes up a lot of stuff. Not moving on from that contract, not bringing in players that complement some of the needs of your young guys, but having a player on your roster that actually is redundant and overlaps what your young guys do, and then forcing that player to be in the starting lineup. So basically having 3 of the same kind of players in a position and not having any strengths like rebounding or transition play at the 3 spot, because you want to play a 3-guard lineup that features Eric Gordon. So these are the type of moves that you look at and you say, is if your focus is development of your players, then why aren't you doing more to develop your players? And these are this is what that I have to reconcile. We're looking at all this and we see these games happen where we play teams like the Spurs or the Magic, teams that are tanking like us, but there's a quality of play that they play with. The Magic executed their game plan down the stretch. They were running their plays. They executed their defensive game plan and their offensive game plan. They were running all their sets down the stretch. And even when they messed up, they came back and ran the set again. So collectively, they have discipline. The Magic trotted out a team of all 24 and 23 and under to close out their game, including a rookie out there, including a sophomore out there. And we had Eric Gordon, a 30-something-year-old, out on the court with us closing that game out. So the whole idea that, oh, it's because they're young. I mean, there are younger teams out there than us. When you look at the starting fives, there are teams that play a younger group in meaningful minutes. We saw Terrence Ross play, but he wasn't out there closing out the game because the Magic are focused on developing their guys. So it really comes down to, like I said, it's not saying that the Rockets aren't developing, but there's a certain structure that a lot of these teams have with the way they're executing their game plans, the way they're running their sets, the way they're running their plays that we don't have right now. There's a certain structure, and it's kind of it's obvious now. And I think everybody could have saw it yesterday when we look like we don't know what we're doing out there. A lot of the plays when the defense switches to something we're not comfortable with. Another thing that I've heard people kind of float around is the idea of bringing James Harden back to the Houston Rockets as a means to fix what's going on with the team. He's a high IQ ball handler that can get guys in position they're supposed to be in and do what is needed for us to be able to win these games. And the way I feel about that is, yeah, that's cool, but there has to be some qualifiers to if he wants to come back. Number one is that the contract length, for sure. The money is not really that big of a deal because you have money, you're a bad team, so hey, whatever. But the contract length is very important. We don't want to be paying James Harden into 2025, 26 when a lot of our guys become extension eligible, and you have what he's going to be like 38-year-old James Harden on your books, which is going to be an albatross of a contract with the way that he is trending in his the way he's downtrending in his career as a athlete. But in the short term, let's entertain that idea of bringing James Harden. What does that look like? And I think people have this false perception that it's going to look like the Chris Paul move to Oklahoma City, where you have this veteran that's it's all world, comes in and helps our guys learn to win. And I disagree with that because I don't think James is where Chris was in his career. Chris Paul had an agreement with the Thunder that he would come there strictly in passing as a transient player just to get to his next destination, which ultimately ended up being Phoenix. And in that year, the Thunder paused their rebuild in order to allow Chris to be able to showcase his talents. And he did what he was supposed to do, and he helped their team develop. And then he moved on and they went back to tanking. I don't think that James is coming here in transit. If he comes here, he's going to come here to stay. And if he's coming here to stay, he's not here to ride into the sunset as a guy that's going to be the guy that helps develop young guys. I think James is still, in his mind, relatively in his prime. And I think he's going to want to come and win games. And if that's the case, the Rockets aren't going to do the Chris Paul contract with James Harden. It's going to look more like LeBron James in LA. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to look more like LeBron James in LA, where a lot of the young assets that we have are going to get moved. And in fact, I could even see a scenario where they actually may trade out of the pick next year to try to get a second star to come. If they can convince James Harden to want to come back to Houston and he accepts it, it has to almost be with the second player. And that's where you can see some of these draft capitals that we have start being used, cashed in order to bring guys in. And to be able to facilitate that, that's where you're going to see some of these core pieces that we have start getting moved out. If you remember when LeBron went to LA, he wanted Anthony Davis there, his second star, and he got Anthony Davis. And what was the cost to the Lakers? Their whole future. And honestly, for Stone and for Steven Silas, and or if it's not Steven Silas, for Stone and Tillman, I can see that being an avenue that they choose to use as a way to kind of finesse out of the rebuild if it fails. If Jalen doesn't develop, if Jabari doesn't develop, if all of this fails and craters out, that is going to be their out. They are going to simply just move some of these guys, including possibly Jalen, Jabari, Sengun, a combination of two of them, or something like that, or some of the other guys, packaging them out to try to get more seasoned players that are ready to win now. So that's definitely in the cards, because if the rebuild continues as is, like I said, you don't go from the basement to the penthouse. You got to go from the basement to the first floor, the second floor, and we in the basement right now. If the rebuild continues as is, they are way off of where they're supposed to be in order to be competitive when being bad is not incentivized. So it's going to be an interesting trade deadline, and also it's going to be a very interesting offseason, because this offseason is going to allow us to be able to gauge how the team in the front office really looks and how the coaching really looks. It's going to be no more excuses, no more we're tanking. Now everybody gets graded. I've been keeping tabs the whole time, and there are a lot of thoughts that I have and on, how the team has been doing, but everybody gets graded now. It gets real, you know what I mean? And this is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting time for the Houston Rockets. I'm not sure how this ends up turning out, but my gut feeling is that they're going to trade away a lot of these young guys and use them as with the picks we have from Brooklyn, our picks, to be able to get two max guys or two superstar or all-star level players to the city, and maybe possibly if they can keep one of Jalen and Jabari, one of Sengun and Tari, and a couple pieces like Tate or KJ, then you're going to see a bunch of vets on the team. I think whenever we say we're going to make the playoffs, that's what the team is going to look like, because the way it's trending with our coaching staff, with the way this roster is built, we're not on path for the Warriors, Memphis type of rebuild, the ones that builds dynasties. We're going to be in the Renaissance type of rebuild, the Clippers type of rebuild. We're going to do the LA type of rebuild, the Lakers type of rebuild. And honestly, some people care, some people don't. I would prefer the organic rebuild of building the guys from youth and letting them stay together and develop and keep, and just to be able to see what they have. But, I don't think the patience is going to be there for the fan base, for the front office, because I think by then people are going to get fired multiple times, which is okay with me. But, if they're going to go this route by getting ringers to come in and bringing in big name guys, so be it. As long as, to me, the main thing is that if they do fall out of the top 4 or 5 pick, that they use that draft next year wisely. Honestly, I'd be okay with trading out of it if it's not a top 4 pick. If it is a top 4 pick, then you already know what you got to do. I think the Milwaukee pick probably has to be used in some trade, because we can't really have nine first round picks on a team at the same time within 2 or 3 years of each other. So I can see that happening. I can see them moving on from either KJ or Tate. Sadly, they're going to move on from one of them. I can see them clearing up some space. I can see them waiving some guys. So it's going to get real. So it's exciting times, but I'm curious to see what y'all know, what y'all think about this, the game against the Magic. What do y'all think about the Rockets' outlook? Should they trade out of the pick if it's not a top 4 pick? Do you guys welcome James Harden? Do you think he'll be somebody that we need? Do you agree with me that if he comes, that they're going to bring another player with him? Because I don't think James is coming here to be a babysitter. I think he's coming to win. But y'all let me know in the comments. As you already know, everybody stay warm tonight, because the freeze is coming through the H. And it's not only the Rockets that are ice cold, the city's going to be ice cold. So y'all wrap your pipes, turn off your water if you got to. You already know, if you're not subscribed to the channel, then you probably should go sit out in the cold. But nah, I'm just playing. But hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want great NBA content, great Rockets content, keep rocking with the Chop Shop as we drop this. Yeah.